Oh, and Dmac, you officially back home with CBI. You wasn't never gonna stop, was you? It's time for you to be baptized into this life. Just like Kanan did for me and Ghost.
Now, it's always nice to hear the names Ghost, Kanan, and Breeze in the World of Power. We know they're OGs, we know their influence, they're the characters that started the World of Power. Or if you actually wanted to take it back in time, you can also argue Snaps, Pop, the Thomases, Unique, Detective Howard, they all had a huge influence. We'll definitely get to that in a bit more detail later on. But it's always nice to hear Tommy mention Ghost and Kanan, who meant a lot to him. You saw him just kind of stare into space for a second when he mentioned both. I do think Tommy just kind of lost himself for a second reminiscing about his two brothers, who in Power Origins are going to show a lot of love. Tommy never really had a father figure growing up. With Kate, we all know their relationship was like when they were younger, so Tommy would have naturally gravitated towards those that showed him love, and Kanan would have definitely been that person to put his arm around him. But in that moment, Dmac was wondering, who? Let's remember, he doesn't know who they are. He barely knows what his Uncle Tommy went through back in New York not too long ago, but I do think he's finally about to learn. And that's the topic of discussion today in this particular breakdown. Tommy and Dmac. Dmac earning his PhD in the streets. What changed Tommy's mind? The lessons that he needs to learn because he's definitely still raw. And finally, will we see that all-important meeting that just simply has to happen? Two of Tommy's nephews meeting, coming face to face, and maybe all three of them going on one crazy mission together towards the end of Force. Tommy, Dmac, and Tariq St. Patrick, side by side. Tommy with both his nephews. When you picture it, Tommy in the middle, Dmac on one side, Tariq on the other side, what a moment that would actually be. Quite crazy when you think about how far we've come from original Power in Season 1. Now, going back to Season 1 of Force, ever since Tommy found out Dmac was his nephew, he's always tried to change his ways. He stuck him in the cash house, tried to talk sense to him, tried to send him to school far away from Chicago. We all had the conversation just recently in Episode 2, for as long as Tommy was in the CBI, Dmac was out. But nothing seemed to work. And eventually, right at the end of Episode 4, we saw Tommy finally telling Dmac, it's finally time for him to be baptized into the game.
It's time for you to be baptized into this life. Just like Kanan did for me and Ghost.
So what changed? What changed during the course of Episode 4 where Tommy went from this at the beginning to this right at the end? Last week we went through a lot of similarities and differences between the situation with Dmac and Tariq. We're not going to be running through the exact same scenarios again, but I do think a mistake that Tommy doesn't want to make is force Dmac into becoming someone he's not.
This is who I am. These suits don't change who you are, and that school can't change who I am.
I think we can probably make a very good argument Tariq came from privileged beginnings. He'd been given a lot of resources that characters like Ghost, Tommy, and even Dmac never had. So for Tariq to say this is who he was, maybe not, but he was manipulated, groomed, and nurtured into thinking that's who he was by the likes of Kanan Stark. I do think that's the right way to put it. As always, power is also subjective, and you might have a different perception or opinion to mine. That's just mine. But let's take Tommy as another example who I do think is a lot more closer to Dmac, and why Tommy made the decision he made towards the end of Episode 4. He's a character we know has always been street through and through. He recently said it to Maria back in Season 2. They can go to Barcelona, have that romantic getaway, but he'll always return to the streets. He also said it back in Power. It's all he's ever known. It's all he's ever been good at.
One more time with that fucking shit. That's your business. This is my business. It's the only thing I was ever good at. Fuck that, you're great at it.
And I do think Dmac falls into the same category as Tommy Egan. The same can actually be said about Dmac here. He's street through and through. It's all he's ever known. It's all he's ever been good at, and he doesn't know any other life. I wouldn't be surprised if and when we see JP's funeral, Dmac doesn't even know how to tie a tie, and where we see his Uncle Tommy come and help him. Small things like this where he's never really had a reason to put on a suit and tie, he's never really had anybody to teach him, that's because Dmac grew up in the streets. He'll always come back to the streets because that's all he's ever known, and he's never gonna change. Kind of sounds like Tommy. And throughout Episode 4, while Tommy was doing his thing, he probably had a long hard think and eventually thought, he's never gonna stop. He's gonna be in the game with or without me, he's street through and through, just like I was at his age. It's all he's ever known, and he's never gonna change. I don't think Tommy will ever change either. I did mention the one thing that would maybe make him consider leaving the game behind is if he had a kid of his own. But even then, I still don't think he'll be able to leave the streets. With that one, I guess we'll probably find out pretty soon when and if we do find out Maria's pregnant. But Tommy probably thought if Dmac is similar to me, street through and through, it's probably best if I bring him under my wing, where at least I can keep an eye on him, guide him, mentor him, nurture him, teach him what he knows. tell him about the mistakes that he made, so Dmac doesn't go and make the same mistakes that he made back in Power, or some of the mistakes that we're probably going to see back in Power Origins. Teach him what he learned from Kanan, Ghost, and also Breeze. It's always nice to get a reference to Ghost and Kanan, two OGs in the game who are now gone. The only time we're ever going to hear from them is in conversations like this from characters who knew them, in hallucination scenes, or when and if they do voiceovers. We've got the older Kanan doing voiceovers for Raising Kanan, and for Power Origins, nothing's been confirmed yet, but I do think we all know who our number one pick is. But towards the end of Season 3, Episode 4, we had Tommy finally accepting that this is who Dmac is. I've got no choice but to baptize him, just like Kanan once did for him and Ghost. He never actually mentioned Breeze. Let's see if he ever does, because the way Ghost spoke about him back in Power, how he loved him like a brother, the way Tommy spoke about Breeze giving James his nickname of Ghost, he would have had a huge influence on Tommy's life, as well as Ghost and Kanan. So let's see if Tommy ever does mention Breeze. But the way you also saw Tommy just stop for a second when he mentioned the two, I do think it went unnoticed at the time, but this was someone who was reminiscing about two people who meant a lot to him. Two characters, two brothers, that he learned a lot from. Not just from Kanan, he also learned a lot from Ghost. He had a lot of love for both. He wasn't in on the plan that Ghost and Tasha set up to send Kanan to prison. That's something I don't think he would have ever been down for. You saw the love that he had for Kanan when he was released. Once upon a time, like we're going to see in Power Origins, these guys had a lot of love for each other. And these little facial reactions, moments of silence, moments of pause, sometimes these silent moments and these reactions do speak 1,000 words. And we as the audience know exactly why. Dmac doesn't, but we definitely do get why Tommy had that little moment. Now he definitely is about to pass a lot of knowledge of the streets down to his nephew Dmac. I once made a breakdown where you could connect Snaps and Pop all the way back to Ghost. How Snaps and Pop's actions in Raising Kanan created a massive ripple effect across the world of Power, which had an impact on Ghost all the way down to characters like Tariq. Same thing here. Thanks to Snaps and Pops introducing Breeze to Kanan, who mentored Ghost and Tommy, we now have Tommy mentoring Dmac in a similar way. It's a crazy cycle when you think about it. And closer to Raising Kanan Season 5, I definitely will do a part 2.
My man Kanan used to say, every good lie is veiled in the truth.
Now, Dmac definitely has a lot to learn. That episode 4 reference that we got to Kanan and Ghost, there definitely will be a few other moments, like the one I just played for you guys now. I do also feel like there will also be some links to Power Origins with what Gary Lennon has put into for Season 3, and also what will most likely be in Legacy. But Dmac definitely has a lot to learn, even though he believes he's that guy. He believes he's him. He believes he'll smoke King Kilo too, which definitely was funny in the moment, but no doubt Dmac is a killer. He's a shooter. He's definitely turning into a fan favourite. I think he's been one of the most enjoyable characters to watch this season. Even though he has been a bit stubborn and reckless at the same time, he definitely has made one or two good moves, because we did see him show his street smarts in episode 3. The way he cleverly orchestrated the hit on the 9/7s was very smart and very strategic. But at the same time, he is still reckless and raw. And that's what Tommy now needs to fine tune. Obviously, Tommy's got years in the game, he's been through a lot more, he's seen more, but you look at him in the trailer for episode 5 as an example, him with his binoculars, he'll be scoping, doing his due diligence, getting rid of murder weapons like giving the gun that had Mad Dog's death on to Vic Flynn. Dmac definitely is talented, but he is still an amateur, like keeping that gun. He definitely still needs to learn, he needs to mature. Just like I mentioned how Tasha taught Tariq or how Rock was teaching a young Kanan in Raising Kanan, it's going to be a real fun time watching Tommy groom and nurture Dmac in the streets, because it is something similar to what we saw with Kanan and Tariq. The big difference between the situation, at least at the start, was that Kanan was manipulating Tariq and using him against Ghost. With Tommy and Dmac, Tommy will only ever have good intentions. He's going to put his arm around Dmac, teach him what's what. For example, this is a move that we made against the Serbs back in Power. We're going to run something very similar. So Dmac definitely has a lot to learn. And even though it's going to be exciting to see Tommy mentoring him and teaching him what Kanan taught him, Dmac's biggest lesson, in my personal opinion, will come from mistakes, heartbreaks, setbacks, and loss. I think over the years we've all probably made mistakes, suffered heartbreaks, and loss of loved ones. And we can all probably agree, those are your biggest learning curves. That's when you grow as a person. That's when you learn or remember some wise words your pops or your grandfather told you who may no longer be here. Exactly like Tommy is now going to do with Dmac, when he tells him, just like his good friend Kanan used to say, every good lie is veiled in the truth. That's something we'll definitely no doubt hear in Power Origins, but that will be Dmac's biggest learning curve. And as sad as it is to say, but he needs JP's death to happen. Maybe he needs Genesis's death. Maybe he needs Marshall's death. He needs that mistake to come back around, because that's going to be the mistake and lesson of basically fuck around and find out. They've all been through it. A young Kanan made a mistake of killing Buck 20, with D-Wiz, which ended up with him losing D-Wiz. He made a messed up batch of product and ended up killing dozens of junkies in the streets. Rock had to clean up mess after mess. I'm sure Ghost and Tommy made plenty of mistakes when they were younger and also lost loved ones. Same with Tariq. He lost Raina back in power because of his stupidity and involvement with guys like Ray Ray in the streets. Now, speaking of Tariq, I do think we all know it's all set up for him to appear in Chicago at some point. You can already see them laying the foundations for Tommy to be kicked out of the CBI, more so after episode 4. Diamond will definitely be choosing Jannard over Tommy. I think that's obvious to see with what they're teasing at this moment in time over the past couple of episodes. I wouldn't even be surprised if Diamond actually goes above Tommy's head and tells El Shay that Tommy's still continuing this war with the Marquez cartel, he's bad for business, the coalition or King Kilo doesn't want him anywhere near their organization, and Che agrees to work with Diamond and Jannard. They cut Tommy out of their arrangement. Diamond will definitely back Jannard, and that's something Joseph Sikora did speak about prior to season 3, and I will put up the exact quote from Joseph Sikora. Now, on a side note, what that also does is it causes more tension between Jannard and Shanti, because then it has an impact on Shanti's plan, who wanted to cut off the heads of both Tommy and Diamond and then take over the CBI. So there are a few different outcomes that could actually come out of Jannard and Diamond approaching Shay, and the two brothers being back on the top of CBI together. But however it happens, whatever happens between Tommy, Shanti, Diamond, Shay, and the CBI, they're definitely all setting it up for Tommy to have his back against the wall, where it's literally just Tommy and Dmac against everybody else in Chicago. And if he's got Dmac as his number 2, and it's just them two doing their own thing, which by the way, having Dmac as his number 2, for as much as he needs to learn and earn his PhD in the streets, we do have to remember this kid actually is crazy. The grenade that he got off the black market, he don't care who he's hitting, he'll get the job done. If Tommy needs shit handling, Dmac can definitely handle himself. But at the same time, can Tommy and Dmac handle all the issues that are about to come Tommy's way? Even if he is baptizing Dmac in the streets, even if Dmac is a killer. If Tommy's fighting a war against Jannard and Diamond, the CBI, Miguel Garcia, the Marquez cartel, Claudia Flynn, maybe even Vic Flynn, he might even start to become stronger after watching episode 5's trailer. Roberto Ortega will probably be released from jail at some point, and then there's also the angle of law enforcement, whether that be Stacey Marks, Detective Seng, or Bobby DeFranco. You can see why Tommy would have to call Tariq. It's because it's going to be everybody against Tommy Egan towards the end of Force. A lot of people were questioning at the end of Ghost Season 4, before Season 3 began of Force, why would Tommy ever call Tariq? Out of all people, why Tariq? But I do think you can kind of begin to see why. He's running out of options. He might have Dmac by his side who can get shit done, but if it's just them two, at some point they probably will get caught because they just ain't got the numbers. He's going to have his back against the wall, he's going to be running out of options, and they definitely are setting it up for everybody to be against Tommy and then also Dmac. And that brings me back around to the beginning of this breakdown. Just imagine Tommy's side by side with his nephews towards the end of Force, Tariq and Dmac. Joseph Sikora has already teased that episode 9 is like a false finale, episode 10 feels like a fresh new show, so that's when I'm probably expecting Tariq to probably enter, maybe around the episode 9 mark, maybe right towards the end, or maybe they have a time jump from episode 9 to episode 10 where they're able to bring Tariq over and make the timeline make sense. I'm just hoping with what they've done with Dmac's character in Force Season 3 so far, that he is someone that Tommy continues to nurture in Power Legacy as well, before he inevitably meets his end, which they've teased to be doing in a Power movie. I think him passing the reins and passing the torch over to Tariq and Dmac before he goes just simply has to happen. I also think Dmac meeting Tariq also has to happen, and them being on a mission together in Chicago before they enter Legacy, there's no better way to hype it up than them having both of Tommy's nephew either side, fighting alongside each other, Tommy, Tariq, and Dmac. But that's where we are with Tommy and Dmac post episode 4. And also what I hope to see towards the end of Force as well. Definitely excited to see Tommy mentoring and nurturing Dmac a lot more throughout Season 3. I didn't think it would actually happen this soon. I thought it would maybe happen around the episode 5 or 6 mark where we do see this moment, but I'm all for it. Let's get the ball rolling with Tommy and Dmac. Let's see Tommy mentoring him and Dmac earning his PhD, and then towards the end, let's see if Dmac also meets Tariq. Let's see if we see both nephews fighting alongside their uncle Tommy. But with that being said, drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section on all things Dmac, Tommy, and also Tariq. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.